Colleen Birdnow Brown is the founder of Marker Global and previous chair of American Apparel, among many other directorships. And she was named 2017 Director of the Year by the National Association of Corporate Directors and Puget's Sound Business Journal. And Colleen's here in New Zealand to speak at the Institute of Directors Beyond Now conference. We have the opportunity to talk to Colleen in the studio. Hello, nice to see you.
Hello.
So you're going to be speaking about leading through a crisis. What crises have you been through in your business career that have helped in this?
It seems like there are so many crises, some smaller than others. Obviously, the work I did at American Apparel, there was such a situation there, 10,000 employees, major issues with the founder, major issues with the governance, major issues with the business itself. And I was recruited to come in and help them sort it out after gaining somewhat of a reputation of being able to lead through a crisis. So whether or not it's a proxy contest or an agitator in your stock who has an opinion that's either different or quite ahead of your own. Those are all things that present themselves to a board. That can be a crisis. There's many other things. There's helicopter accidents where you lose key people. There's a crisis of culture, if you will, in the Me Too movement. You're familiar with that. So there's just so many different forms of crisis that can really put pressure on a board and create what I consider board burnout.
So that's interesting. You talk about American Apparel, which you joined. You were called in 2014, I understand. Were they going through that sort of board burnout at the time when they said we need someone in, at the head table who can show us a way through this?
Yeah, that's a great question because very few people like to ask for help, let alone boards. But no, in that situation, they had an agitator in their stock. And through the process, it became apparent they began to have a problem with their founder and largest shareholder. And the economics of the business had a lot of headwinds. It was a retail business. And on top of that, you had many lawsuits coming to the front regarding some of the founders' behavior. So you combine it all together, there was an agreement reached by the original board and the agitator to bring in half and half to the board, so half old, half new. And I requested not to be either. I requested to be elected by both the old and the new board in order to do my job with as less friction as possible because it's difficult. It's always difficult to navigate the human tendency of a board and resistance that goes on when you're trying to do something as difficult as turn a company around or turn the direction of the culture around, which was the case. Interesting
enough, you look at American Apparel 4 years later, an all-women board. I mean, how specifically were you aiming for that, and what difference do you think it's made for the company?
Well, I do know when I joined the board, it was with the understanding I will join the board as the first female, but you need to promise me we're going to put 2 more women on the board at least, because I can't speak for all women. It becomes more of a token. I often say this when you have 1 woman on the board. They like to say 2 women is a clique, and 3 women you might be onto something there. So it made all the difference in the world for us to get the 3 women, and the fact that it's an all-woman board now is just all that much more just satisfying.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Was that about the toughest directorship for you, or have there been others?
Oh, good question. It's always tough when you're the CEO and a director as well. And I had proxy contests during that time when I was running Fisher. And when you have your own ship with your own people as a management team, the complication is the fact that they're worried about you. They're worried about the intense scrutiny you're going under. You're working with thousands of employees to keep the faith, and you've got competitors who are coming after you. So that was different in a different way when you're sitting in the helm of being a director and a CEO. I would definitely say that the company itself was as hurt as I've ever seen. We had, prior to my arriving, ICE, the U.S. equivalent of, the folks who are tracking immigration, and they raided the studio's 1,800 employees were
Wow.
shipped out. And that goes back to the culture of looking the other way or not doing their homework, or, they know they have to comply. So as much as it was made in America, it was being made by immigrants who were not there legally, and it created a lot of problems, practically shut the whole manufacturing operation down. So yes, I would say it was the hardest, but hard in a different way than many other situations I've been in.
Now, of course, you founded, we just mentioned in the intro, Market Capital.
Yeah.
What do you get from building your own business compared to going into an already established company?
There's so many differences. First of all, it's just scary because it's all on you. And if you come in looking tired, they think something's wrong with, the company. Where before, if you came in looking tired, they think you were out, late entertaining clients. So it's a whole different financial structure. You truly have to have a servant mindset when you start your own company, because you truly are going to be going out and buying your own Bic pens or your own, notepads, or emptying your own trash, or buying the snacks for everybody. I mean, it's just a completely different animal.
How's your finance, your background in finance and digital tech, and now reputation management? How does that set you apart from other directors?
Well, I think that it's wonderful to have a finance background, because fundamentally it creates a shortcut for you to get right to the bones of whatever's going on in an organization. I was taught early on, when I was at Gannett for 20 years, it either costs a nickel or it makes a nickel, and you better know exactly where your nickels are. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because it served me well, no matter how big my company or how little. And I can't tell you how often that would support me in making decisions on the fly, because I always knew my numbers. So I'm fortunate, and I think anyone with a finance background is so well prepped and so well, the underpinnings are healthy to be on a board. The digital technology, I can't even imagine being on a board today without being in the midst of technology or digital technology, and they're slightly different. The IT services and cyber, that's slightly different than how does it work? How does the software work? What is the digital applications in society today? So either way, having a background in each of those would be extremely helpful when you sit on a board, when it seems like 2/3 of what we talk about is who's going to be, nipping at our heels, who is making you a little bit paranoid, and why. And if you understand the repercussions, it takes a lot of the fear out of what's happening to your company or to the industry.
And the reputation management, I mean, would you argue that that is actually everything?
Oh, yes. I think your character and your reputation is everything. And as a result, we used to say in the news business that, the newspaper was the record of the day. Well, it moved to, the radio broadcast being the record of the day, the evening broadcast. And then it moved to the 6 o'clock news, in the U.S. at least, and that was the record of the day. Well, none of those things are true today. What is true is your digital legacy is the record of your life. It is the record of the day. And so whatever goes digitally remains there forever. And that then is the record of the day.
Key for everyone to learn, isn't it? What have you learned from non-profits you've chaired?
Well, working with volunteers is probably the most informative thing that I have learned working with nonprofits. They're there for the heart and the reason, and you have to manage them and work with them and motivate them differently. And that's not to say that folks who are working in a for-profit company aren't motivated because of the love of what they're doing or because of their passion, but they're equally different when it comes to what causes them to show up every day. And so just keeping that in mind when you're motivating and working with the individuals, not only you can do good in a nonprofit, which is very fulfilling individually, but you can do good as a corporation as well. And that to me is equally fulfilling, if not more so, because you have a greater responsibility with more stakeholders than ever than when you're in a nonprofit. So they're similar, yet there's some differences.
Yeah, and far harder to actually measure when you're trying to do good in a commercial environment, to measure what success is.
Yeah, you're seeing more pressure to measure. You're seeing, performance marketing, performance metrics. Everybody's chasing how do you know that it matters. And I love that side of it because it combines both the technical and the math and all the work that I've done through my time in media. I love that combination of trying to figure out, how do you know it matters?
And how do you know what directorships to choose?
First of all, I will say it's if there are people that I believe I can work with on the board or in management, that's like got to clear that hurdle first of all. Second of all, for me is what's their balance sheet look like? Is it healthy? Is it struggling? If it's struggling, why? I like a little bit of a challenge. I don't want to just go in and be, part of the choir. I want to go in and make a difference. So looking at the balance sheet and how healthy they are and what kind of runway they have to make a difference is a year or 3 years what it's going to take to make a difference with that company based on their balance sheet or based on the headwinds that they're dealing with in the economics or the industry. But also the last thing, does it intrigue you? I'm a curious person, and if I'm not curious about it, and I will admit, I've done one bank board before, actually sort of two, and it's just not as inspiring to me to do that because it's so regulatory driven. You're not sitting there imagining up what the next product could be. I suppose you are in financial terms, but it's not the same. I love consumer facing. That's a real easy one for me to get behind. I love things that give back to the community, that give back to the country. I'm on a board that has half of our assets. One of my boards is here in New Zealand, and it's a forestry board. And who doesn't want to show up for 2 weeks for a long board meeting and we're traipsing through your woods? It was pretty cool. And learning about all your species and how important it is to the ecosystem and our responsibility to the country and the Maori and Indian situation is just, I didn't understand it. And now I do. And it gives me goosebumps actually to learn about other communities, other countries, and how it contributes all to one big world, really.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So if somebody comes to you and they're very close to becoming a company director for the first time, what key advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would really encourage them to have sat on a board, nonprofit. That's where I got, kind of my rough edges softened. But I would really encourage them to have sat on a board or get some board experience. Most people don't realize the heavy lifting is done in the committees. And the committees, which are almost always audit, the dreaded audit committee, compensation, and nominating governance. And sometimes there's a risk committee, or in my case, I'm on one board where I chair the technology and innovation committee, and it's both thrilling and scary because I'm looked to be always pushing that agenda forward. I'm looked to be asking those questions of management. Not that the whole board isn't. And in fact, my committee is 4 people, and the whole board attends. They have so much fun with it. I'm not kidding. It's a lot of fun. But I would encourage you to really understand what the committees do. And if you can understand what the committees do and the kind of work they're responsible for, then going into the boardroom, you will be comfortable. You'll be able to give back right away and not wait 2 years to feel like you know enough to say something.
That's great advice. Very quickly, just going back to the importance of having more than just your token woman, how important is it, or rather, what advice do you have for boards who haven't made the real efforts to have diversification, not just gender-wise, but in other ways as well, that they haven't made the effort to have diverse people sitting around that boardroom table?
I can't emphasize enough the diversity of thought. I can get with my girlfriends and have our glass of wine, and we're all talking about the same thing and all pretty much are on the same page. That isn't good in a boardroom. You need diversity of thought. You need to be realizing that you're representing constituencies like your employee base, who are made up of all kinds of different people. You need to recognize your investors are all different kinds of people of interest. I can keep going. Your vendors. It's all of your stakeholders. Think differently, but beyond that, if we are to solve some of the most tough problems out there, whether or not it's what can AI mean to our humanity, for example, a big topic. I think you need all aspects in the room and not just one line of thought. And I have seen a difference. I have seen an immense difference of going from all men to all women. And I don't recommend all women either. I like although that's thrilling, I like to see a balance because it's like, wow, somebody will say something. It's like, I did not think about that. And that means from all walks of life, too. That means, from the privileged to those who made it on their own to, those who went to school on scholarship to those who, had the silver spoon in their mouth or whatever you want to call it. I just think diversity of thought is the best ammo we have in the boardroom to solve the issues that are facing not only the company but the countries and the communities we live in.
Final question. Will the U.S. ever have a woman president?
I sure would have thought it would happen in my lifetime. I don't have an answer for you. I am so disappointed that we're not further along than we are. But I'm going to tell you this, 100% yes, it will have a woman at some point. I just don't know when.
Colleen Birdnow Brown, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.